Greetings Exile and welcome to yet another build guide. Do you want to play a relaxed, simply hold right click character that clears all content? Do you want to go through enemies like an explosive chainsaw? And are you interested in a build that slows, freezes and kills everything before anything can react? Then the Cyclone cast on crit Ice Nova Assassin might just be the build you are looking for. First of all, just in all my builds, this is a path of building assisted build. If you don't know how to use that program, I got a video linked in the description together with timestamps. All footage you can see is out Awakening level 8 on tier 14 plus maps and boss encounters. The biggest advantage in this build is Cyclone. Like in most cast and crit builds, this is the best choice because of its extremely high base attack speed and the ability to move while attacking. The Assassin Ascendancy is still one of the strongest choices amongst all other Ascendancies and builds since it grants damage, survivability and utility. The build features huge damage and strong chills, which makes it an excellent choice for bossing while still retaining fast clear speed, especially as a beginner. Once you got all your gear and skills set up, this is one of the smoothest playstyles you can find within the game. Which leads me to the first weakness of the build. It only starts to shine once you have your Cospris and a 6-link setup. Don't get me wrong, the build also works without those, but for high awakening tiers, you really want the power these items grant you. Another problem is that this is a melee build, which means you have to be close to deal damage and leech. A great life pool helps you against one-shots, but to heal up you have to attack or use a flask. The playstyle itself is straightforward. In maps, you hold right click, spin through your enemies until they die. You can use your flame dash to dodge things and be overall faster. On bosses, you also want to place down your vortex below them to get huge chills, making them slower and amplifying your damage significantly through the use of bone shield support. Another damage boost comes when you put down your frost bomb as well to further debuff the boss. Before you reach the endgame and the big bosses, you have to level up your character first. This is quite complicated on this build, since the pure cast on crit setup already takes a 3-link without having any meaningful damage support suckered in. I recommend leveling until you get a 4 or a 5-link. What I suggest is use Stormbrand or Orb of Storms or a combination of both. They are both super easy and fast skills. I will include a 4-link if you want to run on Stormbrand while leveling up until you get levels and the gear going. In the Act 2 Bandit quest, I suggest you help Alira. Resistances and mana regen, especially while leveling early on, feels really good. And since the build scales with crit, the crit multi is also really welcome. As Ascendancy Progression, take Opportunistic first. Many players might not agree with that choice, but since this can be used as a starter build, the movement speed and the damage helps a lot, especially early on. Then go for Unstable Infusion and Deadly Infusion. A lot of crit chance and crit multi, which the build heavily relies on. As last note, go for Mistwalker, which is the best all-round Ascendancy node in the game. Elusive in this case is like Onslaught but on steroids, and the node itself grants vital damage reduction for the character. The build really starts to ramp up once you have a Cospri Malice as your main weapon. And now listen carefully, this is extremely important. With all your gear and buffs active when fighting bosses, do not get above 7.57 Cyclone attacks per second. If anything, go below that value, otherwise your damage will be cut in half. Why? Because that's the exact cooldown to attack speed breakpoint. I do not want to get deeper into that because you can make a complete video just talking about different break turns, server refresh rate and how to calculate the DPS itself. If you are not using the PoB fork that can calculate Elusive, I highly recommend you install it. I got a link on how to do that in the video description. So, if you're not using the PoB fork, then go over to Notes within my PoB. At the top there, you can see how many Cyclone attacks per second you want to see within the normal PoB calculation, depending on your Cospri Malice attack speed roll. For my specific build, and I highly recommend you follow exactly what I have here in terms of attack speed and passive tree stuff, the easiest way to get closest to the breakpoint is to get a 12% Cospri and no other attack speed modifiers other than the ones that I have. Again, because I already know that many players will do that wrong. Get a 12% or less attack speed Cospri and do not get any attack speed anywhere else than I have it. The only things where I get attack speed from are Elusive from the Ascendancy, the Retribution passive close to the Templar start, and the Onslaught granted by my Flask. Any additional attack speed you might get on a ring, or somewhere on a passive tree if you decide you want to alter the passive tree, can lead to your build dealing only half of the damage. I hope that you could follow me there. I can't stress enough how important it is. Another equally important stat on your gear is cooldown recovery speed. I have it on my boots. You want exactly 14% or more. More doesn't matter, but you do not want to go below 14. If you are not hitting the cooldown or you are overshooting the attack speed breakpoint, then your damage will be significantly worse in the late game. But don't worry. As I just said, until you reach high awakening levels on tier 14 plus maps, you do not have to hit the breakpoints since the content is too easy anyways. The only thing you have to do is to keep that in mind when you go and purchase your Cospri, boots, and your belt. Now, I want to go back to other uniques we use in this build. As a offhand, I highly recommend a Lycosidae. This grants you 100% chance to hit without any investment into accuracy. However, if you have a lot of accuracy on gear, then you can go for a more defensive shield with life, armor, and resistances. As a chest piece, use a Carcass Jack if you're on a budget. It runs everything on an acceptable level: defense, offense, and the utility from area of effect. If you don't mind spending a lot of exalted, you can also get a chest with attack base crit, explode mod, life, and if you can find one, also spell base crit. I snapped this chest for 7.5 exalted, whereas other chests with similar rolls were around 60, so I got lucky. Another really cool unique in this build is the Frozen Trail Jewel. If you put it in the socket with 40 or more intelligence around it, which is I believe every socket we have in this build, your Frostbolt fires 2 additional projectiles. We are going to use 2 of those. Talking about unique jewels, you should try to get a Thread of Hope with a large ring and socket into the Upper Witch Jewel. From there, you can reach Breath of the Rime and Heart of Ice without having to travel there. This jewel isn't fully implemented in PoB, so I added the lines to the item manually. Another crazy jewel is a Militant Faith with the High Templar Dominus role. This turns any keystone in the area to Inner Conviction. We put it into the socket between the Witch and Shadow starting areas, so it turns Pain Attunement into Inner Conviction, which is a huge damage multiplier. But I'm not done with uniques yet. As an amulet, I highly suggest the Pandemonius. This multiplies your damage by about 40% and you will almost always blind enemies. So, it effectively grants 50% chance to evade and 40% more damage. This item is definitely best in slot. The last unique gear item is a Mark of the Shaper Ring. This isn't mandatory at all, like most of the other items, but this item, when combined with an Elder influenced ring, increases your damage by a huge amount. The first priority on the rest of your gear, which should be rare, is to get 75% resistance cap on every elemental resistance. You will also need some intelligence and dexterity because Cospri needs a lot of those. After that, get as much life as possible. Don't forget movement speed and cooldown reduction on boots or belt as well. Also, if you can, get some armor and chaos resistance. Craft added fire damage on a ring, otherwise you won't be able to ignite enemies and make use of the Sinner Swallows Flask effect. Always keep in mind, do not get any attack speed anywhere. Nothing. Talking about the Sinner Swallow, let's go over the flasks now. An instant life flask is never a bad idea. A huge crit boost comes from the Diamond Flask, which in my opinion is the only mandatory flask in this build, since crit increases both your proc rate of the Ice Nova and obviously the damage of the Ice Nova, so it crits more often. Other damage flasks are a Wise Oak if your uncapped cold resistance is the highest uncapped resistance, and the before mentioned Sinner Swallow. As an unveiled mod on that flask, I prefer movement speed, but crit or live regen are good as well. A super strong and super expensive flask is the Bottled Faith. If you can't afford it, well, not many players can afford it, take an Osiris Promise instead. While mapping, take a Quicksilver flask instead. Also, make sure to get Bleed, Freeze and Curse immunity on your magic flasks. As far as Anointment goes, there are multiple viable choices. I went with Heartseeker since it's relatively cheap for the damage it offers. Feel free to use any other anointment depending on your needs. You can get movement speed, crit, or crit multi like Heartseeker, or you can get evasion or life regen. Take what you want. Let's go over all the skills now and how Cast on Crit works. Cast on Crit combines an attack skill with one or more spell skills. And whenever you crit with the attack, the linked spell skill will get triggered. The attack, which in our case is Cyclone, doesn't deal any noteworthy damage, only the triggered Ice Nova does. That means we want as many triggers as possible to achieve maximum damage. I talked about the breakpoints earlier, so I will skip that in this section of the video. If your effective crit chance on your Cyclone is below 90%, socket increased critical strikes instead of elemental focus. Now we have an Ice Nova that's being procced about 7.5 times a second. To further enhance the damage, we are using Frostbolt in our Cospri. What the Cospri does is whenever you crit with this weapon, and this is our only weapon because we only wield the one Cospri and a shield, it will cast the socketed cold spells. So, in addition to our cast on crit Ice Nova, we also now shoot out Frostbolts without doing anything else than cycloning. The Frostbolts are important because Ice Nova can expand from up to 2 of those, which essentially allows us to shotgun enemies in areas where they overlap for double damage. This is why this build uses the Frozen Trail Jewels to get more projectiles. The PoB provides you with multiple different setup options to run in your Cospri. I personally went for the damage setup, but if you want more mixed effects, choose 2 of these gems in addition to the Frostbolt. To even further enhance our cold damage, we are using a Vortex linked to Bone Chill, Unbound Ailments and Arcane Surge. The Vortex chills enemies within the area, Unbound Ailments increases the chill, and makes enemies act even slower. Now, the Bone Chill makes all enemies that are chilled by that area take increased damage that scales with the effect of the chill. So, the bigger the chill, the bigger the damage gain. That combination makes for a strong offensive and defensive buff, especially while bossing. Another ability to place against bosses is a Frost Bomb linked to Elemental Weakness, Curse on Hit. This applies cold exposure and lowers the enemy resistances even more. If you're a more lazy player and don't mind losing a bit damage, you can put the Frost Bomb and the not Elemental Weakness but Frostbite Curse along with your Frostbolt inside the Cospri. A customer damage taken steel skin offers valuable defense. Within the same item, put a 2 link of Flame Dash and faster casting. Do not link these 2 with the customer damage taken as setup, otherwise you won't be able to use your Flame Dash. Other buffs, both offense and defense, come from our 3 main auras: Hatred, Herald of Ice, and Flesh and Stone linked to an Enlighten. If you do not have an Enlighten level 2 or higher early on, leave out one of those mana reservation skills. If you want a more offensive and expensive setup, use Skitterbots instead of Flesh and Stone. This, however, requires you to have an Enlighten level 4, which can be really expensive. While mapping, you want better area coverage since your damage is more than enough in most situations. This means, in your main skill setup, take increased area of effect over concentrated effect. This will both affect your area of the Cyclone and the area of the Ice Nova. While bossing, change increased area of effect to concentrated effect. The rest stays the same in both setups. And now last, Pantheon. I like Lunaris as major because you usually fight enemies in melee range. For pure bossing, Solaris is the better choice. Garukan or Ralakesh are both good choices as minor gods. That's it from me for now. I hope you liked the video guide. If so, leave a like and subscribe for future content. Also, follow my Twitch, link is in the video description. If you have any questions, I'll gladly try to answer all of them in the comments. Also, I'd like to hear some feedback. Instead of just providing plain facts, I try to be more personal and inviting by changing my voice and to talk more freely for a better atmosphere during my videos. But now, have fun with the Awakener level 8 kill. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jay, and I'm out.
Finally stir something.
Rain of stars!
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die.
Low on mana.
Why run? What's the point? Be utterly annihilated. Obliteration!
The others found strength in their projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die.
This world is...
Be silent. Die.
This city is nothing! Be utterly annihilated! Obliteration! Creation!
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain? Die.
This world is doomed! Watch beauty crumble! Glorious flames! Rain of stars! Creation itself! You are...
On the edge of death, my heart races. I am alive.
Beyond, there is only horror. Everlasting fire!
I felt something.